Welcome to Thrive in Design, a podcast about making money and beautiful interiors as it relates to product-based businesses in the interior design industry. Each week, we'll discuss innovative strategies on how to approach product development and design sales in a shifting market. I'm your host, Nicole Lachey Ben. Welcome to the Thrive in Design podcast, where we explore the intersection of design, innovation, and purpose. I'm your host, Nicole, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Rochelle Porter, whose work perfectly blends creativity with conscious living. Rochelle Porter, the brilliant artist and designer behind Rochelle Porter Design, has made her mark in the world of wallpaper and textiles for hospitality, commercial, and residential interiors. Inspired by her Caribbean roots and global design traditions, Rochelle creates vibrant, bold patterns with modern twists on classic motifs. Her brand, RPD, embodies the ethos of design for abundant living, focusing on producing style-forward collections with low-waste production methods and ethical manufacturing partnerships. Her stunning work has been featured in Elle Decor, Hospitality Design, House Beautiful, and HGTV magazine. And you can find her home accessories in retailers like Macy's, Nordstrom, and Target. I am thrilled to talk with Rochelle about her journey, her creative process, and her upcoming licensed collections. Rochelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So, Rochelle, I always like to start the show by getting a little bit more into your background and what brought you to become a designer in the interior product realm. So tell us more about your journey and how your Caribbean roots and global design traditions really inspire your creative processes as well.
Sure. Man, how much time do we have? I was actually just thinking about my journey the other day. And even though technically, like, this iteration of my business has been around for maybe 5 years, just the journey to get here is probably over 20 years. I guess I'll start by saying I have no formal design background whatsoever. I think I maybe took an art class here and there, but I never went to design school, never thought about going to design school, because I come from a typical Caribbean immigrant family where, you come here, you go to a good school, you become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and, that's it. Clearly that was not my path, but that's what I thought I would get into. So design was not really an option. But at the same time, I was just the kid who doodled on everything. Like, if I found a styrofoam cup, I would draw on it. It was just almost like a compulsion. It wasn't something I saw as a talent or a skill. It was just what I did. And, kind of ignored it all my life. Went to college, majored in English and history, much to the chagrin of my family. But when I got out, ironically, I got a job as a computer programmer at a very big, Fortune 100 company, which that's a whole nother story in itself. But, kind of looked like I had arrived. I was living in New York, had the apartment in Brooklyn, worked in Manhattan, and everything looked great on the outside, but on the inside, I was miserable. So I couldn't quit my job because I had real, big girl bills at the time. I
right,
had that,
in New York City,
which was not cheap. It's not cheap. It wasn't even back then. It was not cheap. So I was like, well, I know I'm creative-ish. I don't know what that means or what that looks like, but I need to do something. I need to have some kind of outlet from this very, buttoned up type job. So on a whim, I took a class at FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology. And I think it was like an intro to fashion design class or something like that. And so I'm like, I like clothes. Why not? So yeah. So it was like a 3-day class. It was like a continuing education type thing. And I went to the first class and it was fun. We drew on our little, whatever you call them, croquis, whatever. And I was like, this is cool. And then I went to the second class and the instructor told us that if we wanted to work in this industry, we'd have to send our designs to China to get made. And at the time, what I thought, as soon as she said China, what triggered was human rights violations, pollution, child labor, all these awful things that, obviously there are ethical factories in China, but back then this was 20 plus years ago.
Right.
That was just kind of the impression that I had. And that's what was happening actually in a lot of
Yeah.
factories. So it's like, yeah, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to do this. I don't have anything to do with this industry. So I didn't even bother to show up for day 3 of the class
Mm,
and just went about my life for several years after that, working in corporate jobs that I was not happy in and not knowing what I was supposed to do, but
yeah.
had to pay the bills.
So you took that class, you went back to corporate,
Mm-hmm,
explored this talent and this inkling inside of you. What brought you
mm-hmm.
back to start designing?
So it was actually another class that I took many years, it was probably over a decade
Mhm.
after I took that initial class. Again, I was working in a corporate job at a, quote unquote, prestigious place. But the class that I took, it wasn't an art instruction class per se. It was almost kind of woo woo. It was like about your heart as an artist.
I love
It
it.
was like, what does it mean to be creative? What does God just mean for you as a
Yeah.
creative person? Why do you have all these gifts or whatever? And it sounds crazy, but it was life changing. And it really got me out of my comfort zone and made me think that I wonder if I can do something creative for a living. And I
Mhm.
was surrounded by other creative people. So it was just like, juice. It just
Yeah.
was like a battery in my back. And then I had a series of weird things happen. Like I would be getting on a flight and the agent would look at my passport. She's like, your name sounds like a clothing line. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, sure. Sure it does. And then like I would walk into a Nordstrom or Target or whatever, and I would notice items in the store, whether it was home decor, clothing, coffee mugs, what have you, they had these prints on them. And I'm like, that looks like stuff that I doodle when I'm bored at
Mhm.
work,
I
when I'm
love
in
it.
these 3 hour meetings.
Hmm.
And, my legal pad, yeah, they think I'm taking notes, but I'm really just doodling voraciously in these notepads.
I love it.
So I was like, how does that work? Like, how do people get artwork onto product? So started doing my research. This took a couple of years, started going to trade shows, found out that what I had been really doing all my life was called surface pattern design, and that
Mm.
people actually made a living off of this, creating product or licensing or what have you. And I was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when it clicked for me.
Wow. I love that. I love that
Yeah,
story. Even though it took you a while to realize what that
forever.
skill was, you were able to like continuously come back to it, even in reminders from strangers or just like going to a store and saying, huh, like
Right.
those look like the doodles I do. I could do that, you know?
Yeah.
I love it. And so now you've been doing your designs like officially, you said for 5 years, correct?
I'll say 5 years. We've been through a few iterations before this, just kind of figuring out what products
Mhm.
to do, how to produce them. But I would say I've been doing what I've been doing right now for about
Oh,
the last 5 years.
okay, awesome. For the listeners who are not familiar with Rochelle Porter Design, give us the elevator pitch on what you have been doing and what this like passion of doodling has turned into. We touched on it a little bit in your introduction, but tell the world more about Rochelle Porter Design and what it has become.
Sure. So Rochelle Porter Design is a vibrant lifestyle brand. We specialize in decor accents and wall coverings for both commercial and residential interiors. So on the more, I guess, retail side, we have a line of home textiles. So think throw blankets, throw pillows, beach towels, and some other good stuff that's coming out shortly. And that's available online at several retailers, including Wayfair, Target. West Elm was actually our first retailer, which that's an amazing story in and of itself. And that's sort of the retail side. On the commercial side, it's mostly wall coverings and it's created specifically for hospitality, education, healthcare interiors.
Okay, so Rochelle, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your company and giving us your quick elevator pitch. And we need to know a little bit more about other products that you have outside the interior design industry as well. So tell us more about your activewear collection.
Sure. So, as if I wasn't already doing enough, We have an active brand called Fit by Row, which I'm actually wearing right now. And I actually started that right before the pandemic as well. And it did really well during COVID because everybody was at home and nobody wanted to wear real clothes, but still wanted to look cute. So this is where I really kind of go crazy with patterns and colors. We have everything from leggings to sports bras to tops and just anything you need to run an errand or a marathon or an empire. We got
I love it. A
because
marathon to an empire. I need that, honestly, and like running after my kid at the same time. Perfect.
moms are our biggest audience. So I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you have both sides of the business. It's not necessarily common in what I see in terms of like having the home and hospitality slash commercial side. So I love that you're able to like dabble in both and have been able to achieve success with both sides of the business. So tell us more about that retail side. I know you shared a little bit about your story of like starting with West Elm, but tell us a quick version of that story of what it's been like in the retail side and getting your designs into West Elm, Macy's, Nordstrom, Target, and beyond.
Sure. It feels like we're still very new to the retail side, even though it's been about 2, 3 years at this point. So, like I mentioned, West Elm was our first retailer, and that came about in a very interesting way. So, while I was still, working a regular 9 to 5 job, I was figuring out how business would work. So, that was sort of the first iteration of my business. So, I'm like, okay, what products can I put my prints on? So the first thing that came to mind was just a throw pillow. Not because I have some deep affinity towards pillows per se, but it was a square.
Yeah.
It was the easiest thing to put a print on. So I'm like, okay, let me start with that. So I was able to, produce that mostly in-house, get like a small production team locally to print on organic cotton that I had sourced from somewhere else.
Mhm.
So I had a collection of about, I think, 8 pillows. And I heard that West Elm did pop-up shops in their local stores. So I was like, okay. So went to my local West Elm, showed them my product, and they were like, okay, come in and set up a pop-up shop. And I did that over the course of almost 4 or 5 years, just on the weekends, whenever I could just, set up shop in their stores. You use their fixtures, their signage, and they kind of let you just run wild. So that was cool. So then 2020 came along, and we all know what happened in 2020.
Absolutely.
Yes. So in 2020, there was not only COVID, but there was the social unrest with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement gaining momentum. And there were a lot of brands that were really asking what they could do to support Black makers and Black business owners. So there's this thing called the 15% pledge that came about. It was from a designer, Aurora James. And she was like, well, what you can do is, since people of color make up roughly 15% of the population, then we should be 15% of the items on your shelves.
Mm.
So West Elm was one of the first companies to take the pledge. And because I had cultivated the relationship with them from the years of doing pop-up shops, it was just a seamless transition for our products to be on westelm.com. And by then I had new pillows that were a little more sophisticated than my first that I created. From there, that kind of begat like more press and attracted more retailers. And that's how we started our licensing contract, which is how I'm able to be in all these other retailers currently.
That's awesome. Rochelle, what I love about your products are the bold patterns and colors that have seemed to be a signature in a lot of the work that you do. Of course, you have a wide range of products, but it seems to have become your signature. So how do you approach your product development or and your surface pattern design? Like what inspires you? What does that process look like in developing new collection?
Sure. So I'm inspired by pretty much everything. Sometimes I just get out a notepad and I just start making marks on the page and it eventually turns into a pattern. And other times I see something, whether it's in nature or whether it's something from a global design tradition. It could be a Maori tattoo from New Zealand. It could be something from West Africa, from Scandinavia. and I kind of do my own take on it. I was walking down the street in New York one time and I saw a Subway grate that had a pattern that I liked, and it
Mm.
somehow made its way to my artwork. So it can literally be anything.
Yeah, I love that. And another thing that you said that is super important, I think for all interior product companies to start thinking about is just how they are like ethically manufacturing, right? So sustainability
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of your manufacturing and just like low waste, ethical manufacturers. Can you share more about how you approach that as you are going from, the surface pattern design all the way to the manufacturing? Break down that process for us and how you even select everything that goes into your product.
Absolutely. So sustainability has always been like one of the bedrocks of my business. Like I was into sustainability before it was cool.
Yeah.
It like 20 years ago when I took that class, I almost didn't continue this whole dream because I didn't think I could produce sustainably. So right now, when I produced that first pillow collection, I really looked around the country to find a manufacturer that sourced organic cotton. It's very easy to get 100% cotton from anywhere, but I had to make sure it was organic, even though it was more expensive. That was just kind of like a hallmark of what I wanted to be as a designer. And now, especially when I work with a licensor, I was really encouraged because a lot of what they do in their factories around the world is work with fabrics that are Better Cotton Initiative certified, Okotex 100 certified. So that's baked into every aspect of our
Mhm.
designs. The inks are water based, so they don't pollute the system. The workers are fairly paid. So I don't want to make products unless I can guarantee that those things are in place.
Yeah, and that's important. And I think that's also important for designers, like interior designers that are working on projects to
Mm-hmm.
really think about. Because a lot of the time, especially like coming from interior design school, we're just taught like, here are the codes. This is the type of project.
Mm-hmm.
This is what needs to go into the design. And then once the designer even gets into the field, right, they're working on a project, they're really working on this is the budget that we have. And sometimes
Absolutely.
those things where it comes to like ethical manufacturing and low waste and sustainable ingredients and the products are thrown to the wayside. And I hope that that stops. I don't know. Like we need more
Right.
products. I guess
Yeah.
we need more manufacturers to lean towards how you're thinking so that then the designers are forced to specify good products that are good for people and good
Yeah.
for the environment.
And I do think the landscape is changing in that because with our wall coverings, for example, we have like a PVC lead free substrate.
Mhm.
And when firms specify from me, they always go for that. I
Mm,
mean, we have other substrates that have like mylar because they're metallic, but people go for the sustainable one. So
yeah.
there's something in the water
Yeah.
that changes in the end. So
Yeah, that's good. And I
that's
think
encouraging.
that also comes with most of the specifiers now, well, at least in the commercial and hospitality side, are more like millennial and Gen Z. So I like to think that
Hmm.
like those generations are becoming a little bit more conscious of what's happening in the world
I
and the
think so.
environment. I love it. So tell us
Yeah.
about, what's happening next. I know you've had an evolution of your brand from retail to commercial and hospitality. What are you currently working on and what do you hope to see in the future of Rochelle Porter Design?
Oh man, that's a great question. So we recently released our first line of curtains, which has been a dream come true. I always want to expand to other product lines. Like I always say, if it can have a print on it, I want to put a print on it.
Hmm.
So it's cool to be in this other product category. So right now it's available exclusively at walmart.com. And there are three different patterns and multiple lengths. And of course, it's, Better Cotton Initiative certified and all that good stuff. And they're just really, I think, vibrant. I think they translate from season to season and they could be an adult's room or a kid's room. And it's just really fun to do that.
Hmm.
On the wall covering side, we have a new collection coming out at the top of 2025, which will be, I'll say, a lot more eclectic. um, I think sometimes I try to play it safe, even though I'm, like I'm wearing a lot of colors right now. In my own fashion expression, I don't play it safe at all. But there are clients that want more conservative products as far as wall covering is concerned. But I don't know if I'm going to do that in this next collection.
And that's okay.
I think it's going to be crazy in the best possible way. So that's something I'm looking forward to for 2025.
Yeah, that is awesome. And so in doing all of the things that you do with your textiles, with going to market in two separate ways, whether that be direct to consumer through those retailers, to the trade, and incorporating, ethical manufacturing and sustainability, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face, and like how have you overcome that?
I'm trying to go through all the myriad challenges that I face every day. Honestly, the biggest challenge overall would be the fact that I'm literally learning as I'm going along. I don't have a formal background, like I said, in this industry, and I've been around for a little while, but I'm still very new. So each day is a learning process. There's a lot of trial and error. So it's just really figuring it out is the biggest challenge day to day. So there's never a dull moment.
I can relate as a fellow small business owner. And I think too, in this podcast, there have been a lot of designers, like interior designers, that have always thought about like, oh, I want to do my own collection. Including myself, right? Like I could do a collection, why not? So what would you say to those designers who are like really passionate about creating beautiful products? Yeah, with a purpose. What would you say to them?
I definitely say go for it. One thing that I wished I had done sooner was really try to get those partnerships with larger brands with more capacity than I have. It was a good learning experience for me to start out literally from scratch, literally sourcing my own fabric, finding my own manufacturers, finding my own printers. Like that was a great learning experience, but being able to partner with brands with more capacity has been a game changer. So I would say if you want to produce your own product, do that as soon as you're able to.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, it's super important. Partnerships. I preach that to all my clients. Partnerships, especially when you're just starting out, looking to increase brand awareness. You need those good partners. I love it. So, Michelle, you shared so much today about your journey from really corporate America to really all the telltale signs that kept coming back to you to say that, listen, you are a surface pattern designer, whether you like it or not. So pop-up shops at West Elm that turned into your first licensing project to now have expanded into hospitality, commercial wall covering. You've done all the things, and I look forward to continuing our relationship and to continue to see you grow. So, Rochelle, if people want to learn more about you or even shop your collections, where should they find you online?
Sure. So I am at RochellePorter.com. You can literally find everything there. And on all socials, but especially Instagram, we are Ro Porter Design.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for joining us this week on Thrive in Design. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Thrive in Design. And for more strategies on how your product company can innovate in the interior design industry, head to training.thriveindesign.co. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to create captivating content. See you next week.